Barbara?
Thank you, Shirley, and good morning, everyone. Give me a couple seconds to get my IT stuff set up here online so I can share my screen with you, please. I'm going to share with you this morning on what I have learned about becoming resilient, or lessons I continue to learn. I'm trying to remember how this idea came about, and I think it was after I shared a missive on the Dumbarton listserv about our December 2021 vacation from hell, which was supposed to be to sunny Southern California for a much needed break, and turned out to be social distancing, wearing KN95 masks indoors, sleeping in 3 different rooms of my wonderful friend's house in LA, and having it pour down rain all the time. And I wrote about it, and I was able to laugh. And somebody, one of my dear friends here at Dumbarton, said, way to find, way to be resilient, way to find a way to make us laugh in the middle of that. That would be a good conversation for a future adult ed, maybe. And so I approached Shirley about this, and we started talking. And so I want to make that disclaimer that I'm not a doctor and I don't play one here on Zoom. Everything that I'm going to be talking about is really what I've learned about myself. And I do find that when people share lessons that they've learned about themselves, maybe that's an opportunity for you to learn something that can help you when it feels like things are really hard and life is hard, and resilience seems like something that is just not even able to reach for, let alone attain. So let me start. I want to talk to you about 5 easy steps to becoming more resilient. And if you can see my screen that I've shared, I'm going to take you through the 5 easy steps. Number 1 is lies detected. There are no easy steps to anything. Number 2 is please see number 1 on this list. Number 3 is I'm sensing that you are all still looking for 5 easy steps to becoming more resilient. And I won't be offended if you get up and walk out and go have some coffee in Georgetown right now, or if you stop this Zoom presentation. But if you're still here and I'm still talking about number 5, I'm going to share my story and see what, if any, of these ideas you can use. So if you can see the screen, it says 2020 was going to be my year. And I say, no, really. And how I thought things would go was an arrow pointed straight up. And how things actually went is just a bunch of scribbled lines and a hot mess of who knows what was coming next. I think it's really important for me, and I think for those of you who know me well, I wear my heart on my sleeve, and I can tell my complete life story, much to the chagrin of my own 16-year-old to a complete stranger in the grocery store line. So I am going to say that for me, let's see, the cocktail of generalized anxiety, catastrophizing, perfectionism, a touch of OCD with a sprinkle of, what does my therapist call it? Intrusive thinking. So those have been my mental health challenges that I've been dealing with since I was a teenager. And I will say, when I say dealing, I stayed really busy. I just stayed a step ahead of everything, you know? And so that's how people from where I grew up, just stay busy, just get up, just do your thing. And I never really got counseling until I was in my 20s, and it was for a specific point in my life when my dad died when I was 22. And so, you know, I thought, okay, I understand that, I'm done, I don't need this anymore. And I just kept staying busy to stay ahead of my mental health issues. And that works, of course, until it doesn't. And so we all know what happened in 2016. And I refer to 2016 to 2018 as a very dark, ugly period of really high anxiety for me. And in 2019, I got really serious about taking care of myself and my own mental health. And I started learning why my brain does what it does, and how to handle that. And so I got a great therapist, and 2020 was going to be my year. I was going to get my career back on track. I was going to take care of myself more. And then we all know what happened. And all my catastrophizing with the pandemic came back. I had a mom who I was scared to death was going to get COVID. I started in April of that year going at least twice a month to her house in rural Pennsylvania to provide full-on caregiving. I'm raising a 16-year-old, and my husband's office shut and school shut down, and everybody was in my house. Everybody was in my house for 2 years. And I worked from home. I was the original old guard work from home. And so like there was no peace. And it was just kind of survival. So at one point in 2020, my therapist said, "Hey, I'm going out on my own and I don't take your insurance anymore." And so I remember calling the insurance company and they said, "Well, you're this close to meeting your deductible." And I said, "Okay, well, my therapist is going to go out on her own. What does that mean?" And they said, "That means you have to pay the first $6,000 before we'll kick in anything." And I said, "Okay, well, that's not going to work." So I thought I could do it on my own, and I stopped therapy. And yeah, that's when things got all squiggly again, as you can see. So I started to put together some slides for this presentation on when I really thought about the last 2 years and where I am now versus where I was, what does make me more resilient? And so I'm going to start with talk therapy for myself. It's really taught me what my triggers are, how to manage them. It's taught me concrete tools, tips, and strategies. I love nothing more than when I say something negative about myself in a therapy session and my therapist interrupts to correct me, which is the third bullet on here, that I'm a lot kinder to myself now. So, you know, the question I ask you is the question I ask myself. Would you ever talk to someone else the way you talk about yourself when you're being negative? And resilience for me out of this learning is therapy is going to be a lifelong thing for me, talk therapy. You know, I mean, it's like somebody's heart medication or high blood pressure medication. I'm just always going to need it. I'm always going to need somebody there who's an impartial third person to help me figure out or help me figure out for myself. You know, the next thing for me that helps me be more resilient is finding very simple, everyday joys. This is not rocket science. I love the kids' book, The Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day. If you've heard me give, you know, the story for all ages message, I have used this book more than once. And so I would just say to you, when you're having a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day, I just encourage you to take out your smartphone and scroll back through the photos that you've taken. If you're like me, chances are you'll find something in scrolling through those photos that makes you smile. And here's something recently that made me smile. Whoops, let me go back. I was at the Renwick right before they closed to get ready for some new exhibits, and the glass exhibit was on its final showing. And I just wandered through that museum and just gave thanks for the gift of art and beautiful things to look at and take my mind off of scary things in the news or uncertainty in my own life. And I love going back through my photos. one of the most fun things to do is my family and I do a holiday card. Correction, we do a New Year's card, which should probably be a Valentine's Day card or maybe an Easter card by the time we ever get them out. But looking back through all those photos, I just love seeing moments of simple everyday joy. That's another thing that gives me resilience. Self-care. Self-care is a big conversation, right? And sometimes self-care gets packaged as doing your nails, getting your hair done, getting a massage, and those can be self-care things if that's what works for you. What works for me in terms of self-care is setting boundaries. And again, simple, like, this is not rocket science. If I exercise, if I eat right, if I get enough sleep, I tend to be able to handle more of what life throws at me during the day, which I think is hilarious right now because I got no sleep last night. So I haven't had a good night's sleep in about 2 years. And I know, like, when I have really bad periods of going through bad sleep cycles, I was thinking through this presentation last night and I was reminded of one of my favorite movies, which is Steel Magnolia, and Shirley MacLaine's quote of, "I've just been in a really bad mood for 40 years. That could be me. I've just been in a really bad mood for X number of years. The second one on here is saying no. I used to be the person who said yes all the time. And then I couldn't follow through on my yes commitments, and I let people down and I let myself down. And then I just got into that shame cycle and, why did I do this? So now I say no. And it's good that I'm looking at the Zoom screen right now and I'm not making eye contact with anybody who's here in the room, because I have turned down committee assignments for this church and I have said no. But I think that's a good thing, right? Is especially here in our community, I've said yes to the things that I knew I could commit to until I couldn't. I said yes to leading, children and youth cluster programs until I knew that was something I could no longer do. And I started working on the Catalyst initiative. And there have been times that I haven't been 100% on that. And the ebb and flow of these things are, chances are when you say no to something, somebody else will say yes. And you take a break and then you come back in and your resiliency gets a little bit of a recharge. Meditation is a big one for me. And I put this one on here because I used to think meditation was like, what? No, I can't do that. I can't. What? No, there's too much noise in my head. And like anything, I just had to learn how to do it, right? And so I'm a big podcast listener, so I listen to a lot of meditation podcasts, and works for me. But I had to tell my brain meditation can work for me. Reading for pleasure. Oh my gosh, I don't know if any of you listened this morning to On Being. One of my favorite authors who has devoted her life's work to children's literature, Kate DiCamillo, was speaking. I highly recommend listening to that episode of the On Being podcast, and go pick up a Kate DiCamillo book. Go pick up Louisiana's Way Home and just lose yourself in a beautiful story, and shut out the world for a while. Triggers. Triggers is a big word that has become part of our everyday conversation. And I am really comfortable using the word trigger. I know that word can be weaponized against people, but when I do things like limit my intake of news, we all live through a period of 24/7 news cycle now. You can find you can't get away from it unless you choose to put it aside. And I don't think, again, speaking for me personally, if I say I'm going to listen to the news for 30 minutes to an hour in the morning and maybe another 30 minutes to an hour at the end of the day, that's not me abdicating my responsibility for being a citizen of the world and working for justice. I just think it's me saying my brain can only handle so much on a daily basis. My second bullet point, less doom scrolling. I was a big doom scroller. Scroll, scroll, scroll through all the bad news on Facebook. And then for days on end, I would get something stuck in my brain and it would be an intrusive thought, and then I would just catastrophize about it. So I'm stealing this from the Washington Post weekend edition, where they featured a picture of the cherry blossoms. And so I'm going to say less doom scrolling, more bloom strolling in 2022. And and this third one is really for me. You know, I have a lot of people with whom I'm connected to in my own immediate family, in my extended, wider friend circle, who don't think about religion or politics or society or culture the way that I do. And I can talk to some of them and I can have really good conversations, and some of them I cannot. So this is a hat tip to my friend Tracy, who's unfollowed, snoozed, or unfriended certain people. And she says, I can love them from afar. I don't need to know what every thought is of every waking moment of everybody. And again, that's for me. I really had to put this one in practice because I really started disliking people and having really negative feelings for them. And that just didn't make me feel good for myself. Simple, small things that I think every person who's watching this or is here listening to me, we all do this, right? If you have an area of expertise and you have a little bit of extra time, doing pro bono work for a really good cause, someone who can't afford my communication services, right? I do communications for a living. So there are organizations that are doing really good work. And I said, I can just do communications work for them. And that's pro bono because I believe in their cause, in their mission, in their work. Writing, calling elected officials, that's a never ending way to stay resilient, right? It's my individual power and my collective power. Protesting, showing up for a rally, bearing witness to somebody else's pain. On the day that I went and took those photos at the Renwick, there was a protest against Russia's invasion of Ukraine steps away from the Renwick. And my family and I stayed on the edges of that and were bearing witness to a lot of Ukrainian Americans and Polish Americans and people who just were showing up for peace. And you feel everything at those events, right? But you also know that you're part of a larger community. Yesterday, I went to an event that was organized by two friends, one of whom is my friend, and they said, come make peace bombs, come get your hands in dirt and sunflowers, and then roll up that peace bomb and plant it in an unexpected place where flowers can bloom. And bring a terracotta pot and plant it, and then we have potting soil and seeds, and take that home and watch something grow. And my friend Jenna is an artist, and she made a silk screen that says "Grow Hope," and I did my first silk screen shirt, and I can't wait to wear it. I always think about this in springtime. If you want to feel hopeful about anything, plant something, really. Plant a seed and watch it grow, especially something that comes up every year. You did it once, but it just keeps giving back. Donating to reputable organizations where your money that you have the privilege of donating goes to somebody in need and it does good for a larger cause. Choosing where I shop, how to spend my money. These are small, just little things that, I don't know, just builds up my resiliency. choosing peace. I do not have to win every conversation. I used to think this all the time. You know, one of my favorite things in high school was being in speech league, arguing. I love to argue, and I always wanted to win. I don't have to win. I won't win. I don't have to be right all the time. In fact, I will be wrong probably more than I will ever be right. I do not need to engage with you. I mean, not you, not anybody here, but you know, this is a larger of like, why do I get involved with arguments with people on social media? Is that really helping anything? These are, again, things I've learned about myself. And I don't have to do that thing, whatever that thing is, just because. So I feel like when I choose peace in a situation, that builds up my resiliency. This one, being able to ask for, accept constructive critique makes me a much more resilient person. And I'm going to share, this one's been with me for about 20 years. I was hoping I would make it through this one without crying. Martha is sitting immediately to my left, and Martha wanted me to make her laugh today, but Martha, I might have to do just a little bit of crying. I had a problem with anger management. I have a problem with anger management. It is something I have to work on constantly. And I have a really dear friend who was with me on a girls' trip. And I remember this as though it were yesterday. We were somewhere in a roadside rest off of 95 South, coming back from probably New York City, where our other friend lives. And there was a baby who was crying, screaming at the top of its lungs. And I just wanted that baby to stop crying. And I just wanted that mom to do something, because it was ruining my experience, right? It was stealing my joy. And my dear friend Lynn looked at me and said, if I didn't know, I know you're going through a really hard time right now, but if I didn't know you from a long time before this particular moment, you make it really hard to be your friend. I wouldn't really like you as a person if this is the only part of your personality that I ever saw. And that was such a gift for me, to understand that when I'm angry and I just vomit up my feelings, that's all I do, right? And so she and I talk about this a lot. She doesn't even remember that moment, but I do. So being able to, when someone says, hey, you may not realize you're doing this, is to just step back, take a deep breath and say, okay, what can I do with this information and how can I do better? And I will share with you that I'm a writer, right? So I have to give my work to other people, and they edit it and they give me feedback on it. And when you're a maker or a creator, when you put something out there, you have to be able to withstand critique. So this has been probably one of the hardest ones for me. And at the end of this conversation, before I shut it off and just open it up for what I hope will be an opportunity for us to share, being vulnerable, being here today and telling you that I struggle with mental health issues. I am really, that's an awkward, that's a brave thing. Being able to know that you will receive this, is a kindness. And so these are my three favorite words from one of my favorite podcasts from Brené Brown, whose work has really helped me in building more resilience. She has a podcast called Unlocking Us. And she always says, stay awkward, stay brave, and stay kind. So thank you for coming to my TED Talk.